Okay.
Maybe you will kind of like understand.
I'm gonna unbox the gift because I'm so hungry.
How do I change the slide?
You can just sit. Scroll.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is just what we've been up to this week, basically, an overview. Yeah. So, are you wanting to say something?
Can I do this part?
Okay,
Yeah.
the street part.
Oh,
No, you use that one. I'm just putting.
Okay.
I'll scroll through. Yeah, you want to give the.
Yeah, I think everyone know about the historical site. This city was established in 1351 as a national history called the second capital of Siamese kingdom. So the document, most of the document were created around 13th century or 14th century until 18th century. And that time, become like a cosmopolitan and trading center to like a global commerce, and many foreign Dutch, French, and like many nations came to this city and record the history, chronicle, and everything about However, Ayutthaya was collapsed because the war with the Burmese. So like many institutions that we visited yesterday keep some document in in that period. For example, at Ayutthaya studies in still keep some record in the late Ayutthaya period to early Ratanakosin period. And for the last one that we visited today is the Siam Society, who keep some like foreign record, for example, like a Lalubert record and the Chomong record, something like that. And so I think the important point of this record, I mean the record in the Ayutthaya period, is like 100 years ago, Ayutthaya historical site was like a re, right?
Yeah.
Like a re-established again, because they wanted to reuse this as the national monument. So it is like a reason why like many Siamese elite foreigner in that time would like to visit Ayutthaya and keep the record and find some document in the Ayutthaya period. So the next one.
Yeah, wait, I'll go. I've got, maybe I can also explain just a little bit about this slide. So this one, like, is also about the listing. So obviously it's listed in 1991. But then we tried to identify some of the key kind of management issues for the site. So obviously one is the flooding in 2011. And we found that actually quite a lot of the collection was impacted. So that is kind of one kind of impact on the archives. But of course, like afterwards, we had this ICOMOS advisory mission, or was it 2013, I guess? But one of the recommendations we saw in their report is that there needs to be put in place a detailed documentation system for the structures within the World Heritage property. So this is also to kind of look at the impact on the flooding and monitoring the conservation for each of the monuments. So probably this detailed documentation system, like I think there's a documentation system, but probably isn't detailed. And then this could be an area where we could like have a strong link to the preservation of the archives. So the archives is the documentation system and also replying to this recommendation. So we kind of think that this is linked together. It could be a good entry point, I think.
Sensible, yeah.
And then this one, did you want to, this is the history of conservation. Yeah. So this one, like, I think maybe I can just quickly, like the rationale, like why do we need the history of conservation? It's like, you know, the slide I showed in Borobudur, like when we have the history of conservation, we have a conservation campaign. Like normally it ebbs and flows, like it goes up and down, like in terms of resources. Maybe it's like a political interest of a certain government at a certain period of time. So what we find is that the archives will generally relate to these kind of periods. So like that period in like 1935, for example, like the Fine Arts Department, the section on archaeology and museums was established in 1933. And then almost 2 years after, there was this campaign of listing these 69 monuments and doing a lot of work at that period. So these archives we found is in the National Archives, for example. But then later on, we can see moving towards establishment of the park, like in the late 1970s, 1960s to the 1970s. There was also kind of another focus on setting up the park. So these kind of more contemporary records are what are held at the site, and the earlier records we found are held at the National Archives. Do you want to add anything, Ripad, on this kind of?
When we look at the status of the document in National Archive, I think we found the gap of a document like around the period in the 1935 to 1956. It has the problem because for me I can't find the archive in this period. So that means we don't know much about how Ayutthaya was conserved by the FAD.
Okay, so this next slide, it's like slightly related, but you know, in my presentation it was Monday, like I kind of showed like how the archives are structured. So normally, like when we're doing the arrangement of the archives, we do it by the agency that created the archive. So like we tried to track what were the different agencies that were involved in the conservation at Ayutthaya. So like, for example, we could look at the Fine Arts Department under the Ministry of Education. So they were established 1933 and they were running their projects like up to 1952 before it switched to the Ministry of Culture. And I think, I don't know, the politics of that period, it was a short ministry, the Ministry of Culture, but I think a lot of work was done in that period and then it was left unfinished. But that would be another kind of agency that we would look at the records that agency created. And then if we go down, we can see that the Fine Arts Department was back under the Ministry of Education. And they were also collaborating with the Department of Country Planning from the late 1960s. And then in the 1980s, we had the Lopburi Regional Office of Fine Arts. So this is before the third regional office. So they were doing a lot of work at the site, generating records, not just for Ayutthaya, but the surrounding area as well. And then in 1995, it switches to the third regional office of Fine Arts. But what we found is that the archives from Lopburi were brought over. When the staff moved, they brought a lot of the documentation. So we can find from those two periods still in the third regional office.
So that means like things before Lopburi Regional Office is actually more difficult to find.
Yeah.
Not quite there.
Not quite there, yeah. So like we still have a gap like that late 1960s period. We still really don't know where those records are, like before the park was established. Like,
And we have, sorry.
National Archives or what kind of timeline?
I'm not sure about that because the nature of the record in that time. Sometimes I could just did something without like a full report. They have only a note, one note on one page or something like that.
Yeah, like a work log,
Yeah,
like daily log of work.
yeah.
But I think we can see like we might need to do some more analysis. Like, you know, I shared in the group they shared some inventory, right, in Thai. But maybe we need to check because they kindly prepared the inventory of all the records they have on Ayutthaya. But we need to like probably have a look and see like you said, like some of it might be only one page, but others might be more detailed.
And when I ask like many staff, even the director, they are not sure about their own organization history. So we need to get to check that. It's the reason why has like a many question mark.
Yeah, but as we know that it's been shifted between Ministry of Education and Culture twice. Like the Ministry of Culture used to be up and down and up again. So I think that's quite coherent, but in terms of the years and things that could also be vital in tracing back some of the archives.
Yeah. And I'm not sure in some point that like I remember that some the region department have like a lot of
The
influence.
Department of Religion.
Yeah, the Department of Religion.
Okay.
Has like an influence in like a conserve archaeological
temples.
evidence and temple and many monuments. So maybe we should like study this department as well to like understand the development of the conservation of the youth.
Yes. It's also another aspect of the functioning of the temples in the UTR as well. Like, because from in my understanding, sometimes like when it's the work of the Fine Arts Department, it's on the archaeological aspect of a place, but it would also like the same place can also still be still a living temple where they still have ceremonies, they still have monks staying there, which is the kind of a business of the Department of Religions. So, and in like, you know, restoring part of the fund in restoring a newer monuments or buildings, like, you know, the monasteries and stuff could also be done by the Department of Religions, but probably like in consultation with the Fine Arts Department.
Okay.
Within the same ministry, they're more like easier to communicate than if they communicate inter-ministry. Anyway.
Not sure because they never share data together.
The kind of core data.
Yeah, because Department of Religion belong to the land property as well.
True.
So they like don't want the Fine Art Department to involve with that benefit. You know?
Yeah, I think like we could probably like refine that one. Like maybe we need to check. Like I think the National Archives, like I'm sure like they gave us that inventory, so we could probably check in that inventory like what the records are. And I think it's a good point. We need to add in
just to recognize.
Yeah. So that could be like one of them.
And as I know, Department of Religion has never sent any archive to a national archive.
Oh, but they could have a lot of archives.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Okay, so it's never been an input from the Department of Religions to the National Archive.
Yes.
In any place or just in the focus of UTR?
Yeah. I asked P Dao and director.
Okay.
I think that's okay. Like, I think in terms of our project anyway, like we're going to be focused here anyway, because I think like the National Archives, like honestly, like how they manage their records and do everything, it's already quite good. You know, they have their reading room, they have their policy, but this is where I think we need to focus our attention in terms of our project. Site management will be kind of in this space here, while also completing the inventory.
So I think I needed to like interview some previous dean of the department to like understand the history and why and the reason why they like change the office of them.
I mean, just for the purpose of this project, just listing these people, these agencies down is helpful, right?
Yeah.
Just so that later on we can refer to this list and think, oh, like if we want documentation from like 1972 to 1952, like who should we be involving or like who should we approach?
Yeah, I can do
So
that.
it's just a reference material.
Like what would be like helpful, I think, like later on is, so this we know is held at the National Archives. So, and then the National Archives already gave us the inventory in Thai. But what we can do is from their inventory, just like list down the records that they have for each period, like even in like bullet point form. And then we'll have like a kind of more complete idea. Okay, so here's the different collections, the different institutions that hold the collections. So we found the National Archives, it's mainly from the 1930s up to the 1970s. And then the FAD Bangkok. And do you want to explain the archaeological section here, like this difference here?
FAD at Bangkok consists of like a mini sub-division or sector, such as archaeology, mural painting conservation, architectural conservation. So each of them are like responsible for each kind of work. So, for example, archaeological sector is in charge in like excavation and archaeological survey. So they keep it and don't share to mural painting section and architectural section at the like at the same time. Mural painting and architecture sections have never like a share the data with the archaeology section as well.
Oh,
So it's like a difficult for them to like because they are like a respond in like each kind of work. So the difficult thing also like FAD at Bangkok have like their own like a development in some period. You can see that before 1980, Ayutthaya was in charge by Bangkok office. But after that, Lopburi was in charge Ayutthaya. So some documents were kept at Lopburi, but when they changed the policy to establish the new office at Ayutthaya, most of the documents moved to Ayutthaya. But I'm not sure about that because of, from my experience, I saw like some Ayutthaya archaeological site excavation reports are still keep at the Lopburi.
Okay, and then here's a third regional office. We'll have some more, like probably don't need to spend too much time. We've got our assessment later on, the historical park of Ayutthaya. In Siam Society we visited today, they have just publications really, and some like traveler's account going to Ayutthaya, but it's probably not super relevant for our project at this stage, but it's just nice to connect with them, to share what we're up to. And then the Ayutthaya Studies Institute, they have the palm leaf manuscripts from the temples around Ayutthaya, and then they mentioned they're also doing a Memory of the World nomination at the moment
for their collection.
for their collection. So there's like a nice, like not necessarily directly in our project, but it's a nice crossover point. Okay, and now we move to like, sorry, there's a lot of text, but this is kind of our assessment of the site. Wow. So here, we can say they have a mandate for 5 provinces to look after, set up in 1995. And some records are held, were transferred from the Lopburi office to the 3rd regional office.
Oh,
And we found even within the office, there's kind of 2 sections that hold the archive. So one is the architecture section, and they're holding like these maps and plans. I think you met one, who's the lady?
yeah. Oh, yes.
So she's kind of running the show in this section.
Yeah, she's the main
She's
person
the main
managing this bit.
So this is their kind of where, as you can see, it's like an overflow of all their like plans. and maps.
It's endless.
Yeah. So that's their section. And then this is the archaeology section. They also have like all of these kind of photographs and archaeological reports that are kind of sitting in their office. And what are they like? The young people are kind of managing it, the young archaeologists. And they said, this is our like inheritance that the senior people just kind of left with us and we don't know what to do. But they're doing something
after the flooding. So
most of them are like joined the finance department after the flood,
After the flood,
2011. Yeah.
But they're doing stuff like some of the guys in the archaeological office, they try to just create their own like basic catalog to manage the data. So they set it up on their computer. So they're already doing stuff. But
With their own capacity.
own capacity.
Wow.
And then what else did we find out? So in this section, like actually a lot of the plans, they think that 70% of the plans have actually been scanned in architecture section. But one of their problems is they don't really have server or hard drives or like preserving the digital records. So we found out one time there was like a power surge and they almost lost all of their data, right?
Goodness.
But then what did they took it to like data recovery.
Recovery. Yeah, it's very expensive, about 50,000 baht.
Yeah.
So they're living on the edge. Yeah, so they probably like later on we'll see the recommendations, but they
But did you also ask them, like, for example, like the fortunes that they have digitized, like the papers that they have digitized, what do they do with them? Does they keep them here?
Yeah,
Or they send it to the National Archives?
Oh, you mean the originals?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
It's still there.
Yeah, so like ideally like for the recommendation for this section, like they should like improve the storage of the originals.
Yeah.
Like basically they need probably more of these drawers to store, and they probably need a new space to keep.
But if like by the new regulations that we have learned from the National Archive that they have just recently set up the National Archive in Suphanburi, right?
Yeah.
Which is supposedly for Ayutthaya and many other surrounding provinces. Will the responsibility of storing these still be at the finance department, like at the regional office, or they more rightfully move them there?
Like that one, like we could ask like whether legally they need to. I think there's always the argument that they can keep them as long as they need them. So like that,
like a working dock.
Yeah, so we need to ask them like, do they feel comfortable?
Is this really a working dock?
Yeah, but I think sometimes they like to have them around, right? And I think it's also if they want to have them around, it's nice to have that records at the site office, So like I think that's like it's a good question, but yeah, if they have the capacity to keep looking after them, like it's okay, I think, to have them there. Yeah, so that one is that office, and then in the architecture section, and then in the archaeology section, we found that there's like crates and crates of these photographs that haven't been kind of digitized or catalogued. So a lot of it you find like it's very interesting, like here you have a photograph and then the metadata is like written on the back of the photograph.
That's like a postcard.
Yeah, it's like so that would, I don't know, I can't read it, but I think it explains the site where it was found. So like the point is like if there's like a digitization project, it should be a project that just doesn't scan, but all of the context and metadata has to be captured at the same time to make it like a searchable collection. Yeah, so that one, the main recommendations would be like to do like an inventory mainly of this collection.
Yes.
To understand where they're from, and then to set up this digitization and metadata capture process. And then also like improve the storage for the photographic collection. So like normally when the photos are stored in this type of plastic, over time there'll be like a chemical reaction.
Yeah.
And then
Mixed
you'll-
material.
Yeah, so it should be like archival safe paper. And then improve the storage here. And then I think training for the staff in archives management, data backup, developing the policy for accessing the collection, and then like looking at the disaster risk management of the area, because I think there's still a risk from flooding.
Yeah, yeah.
But then we're also kind of brainstorming other ideas for digitization.
We have the idea, but be next.
Next
Because the limit of the budget of the FAD and maybe also SCO. So the idea that maybe I will like create some project for UTR archive and ask us a local student from Rajabhat University at UTR to digitize like all photo. But the problem is the difficult thing is to identify this picture and like some documents, because we need like some like a specialist to like identify, for example,
Like kind of categorize them by
categorize
importance. Right?
Yeah. And also like I think the main problem is not only categorize, but when like if some student got the photo, sometimes they don't know. Even archaeologists, sometimes we don't know.
Yeah.
So we need like some like a senior archaeologist who have ever like work in this site to like really identify those pictures.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like we can get the senior archivist, but I think what we can do is also do like what they call like archives appraisal. So archives appraisal, it's like being a detective, right? Like figuring out the provenance based on the information that is there, like cross-checking like maybe on the folder, normally there will be like a name of a project or the site and like maybe a date. So like documenting like the provenance of the collection, but then cross-checking it with the senior archaeologist, like that whole process, like documenting what's there, cross-checking it, confirming it, and then doing that. But I think for this one, like what you would need to do is set up like a whole process, like a standard operating procedure. So like whoever's doing the work, there's like a workflow. So like starting from like an Excel sheet on inputting the data, through to like digitizing it, through to uploading it onto whatever kind of cataloging system that we decide together that we would use. So like you'd set up the workflow, and then once the workflow is set up, you do the training. And then if the students come in, there's already like the standard operating procedure of like, oh, we need to do this. And then like you could manage it like that.
One relieving aspect to like doing the detective work is that like when we talked with the staff in this archaeological department, they said actually these photographs are included in the reports.
Yes.
So they didn't digitize them separately, but like most of them are like in the report. So I think if we could cross-check with the reports, it would be very helpful to identify and categorize.
Yeah, we can do some. But maybe around 40 or 50%.
Do a bit of a sample.
Report.
But I think this would be like a really neat project like that you could probably achieve by the end of next year. And it would be like very tangible, like outcome, right? Like if you maybe
transform just that room.
Like these like boxes, like, and then also photographs, it's very visual, right? Like if you have a searchable database of
archive makeover.
it's like really, It would be
There
awesome.
were like really nice photographs of all the murals.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a good exhibition if we were to
Wow.
like, digitize
Yeah,
everything.
so I think like this could be like a good pilot project, like to prove the concept and to show like this method is like really worthwhile. But then also at the same time, like helping with the access policy. Because I think one risk of this project is that we do all the digitization and then we get kind of some objections for public access. So we have to at the same time develop that.
True.
Okay.
Good things that you can do out of that. Okay, now.
So now we're moving to the historic park of Ayutthaya.
Oh, it's so in order as pictures.
Yeah. But this is this kind of sad story. So what we found out, like, you know, in that building, the bottom floor was like heavily impacted by the flood, right?
Oh, yeah.
So all of their photographs and records were held on the first floor. So the staff, like the younger staff, they don't really know the situation, but they were estimating that at least 50% were lost. And then what we found actually that the data, like the damage records, they weren't really held anywhere, but they were like kind of chucked out at that time. Like I guess they were damaged quite badly.
Yeah.
So here from that remaining records, like very few of the records still remain. So like there's one kind of photographic collection, but it's only like I'm not sure how many folders, like not a whole lot of the data still remains. But they have the maps and plans they still have. Yeah.
Plan is around 10,000 plans, as I know.
The conservation plans, right? The,
Conservation plans.
The shop drawings.
Architecture, and for the photo, it's around 4,000 photo.
4,000. Wow.
So like this one, like if you wanted to combine it with this one, like you could set up the same like standard operating procedure, like maybe even like you could get like a digitization, like a camera setup for each office.
Yeah.
Or you could combine them if you wanted to, like depending on how you want to manage it. But yeah, you could train this staff at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we found like again like problem of storage of the plans. Like most of them are stored like this.
Very
Yeah.
artsy.
Scanning machine is not working.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
But I think apparently they've all been scanned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up until 2018, but they said not
After
after
that,
2018.
Oh,
But I guess they already
Those
have the
may
digital
have
files
digital,
after.
yeah. It's like after 2018, I think they
always
everything on
had-
computer. Like
Yeah.
they AutoCAD mostly, not hand drawn.
I think their recommendations are pretty much similar to the third regional office. And then what we did find out actually through the fine arts department, they already have established and like online, they digitized most of those records
Yeah.
in 2018. Through, I don't know, their technology section, they said they have a section there. So they went and digitized everything from most collections. So the plans, but they didn't do photographs. So they did plans and then the project archaeological reports. And then like they developed a system, like it's very practical, I would say that. It's like Excel, basically it's an Excel system.
Easy to use.
Yeah, easy to use. And then the image files are kept separately. And then they arrange the data by province. And then they divide into two categories, so archival reports and then the maps and plans. And then for the archival reports, they divide it by site number, the agency responsible for the site, the location, the status of the site, whether it's a listed monument or not, the name of the project, the budget, the year, the unit responsible for the project management, and then they include the digital file name. So that's the one, like when you find what you want, you've got to copy the name of the file and then you do a search. Like the file's like 001118 JPEG. So then you go into your other folder and then search it like by that.
Very man-made.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the last one is the location where the record is held. So either in Bangkok or at the third regional office or at the the park, the Heritage Park office. And then the maps and the plans is pretty much the same.
But I believe, like, because like I also visited the National Archive of King Rama the Ninth, like a few days before you came, right?
Mm.
That's why I sent my videos.
Yeah.
And I think they also showed me that there's a kind of the interface, the front end, like this is their back end, and they hope that one day, I'm not so sure, like now or in the future, they will be able to link it to the public one.
Oh, but that one is from the National Archives, though, right? Not the FAD. This is FAD,
FAD.
Fine Arts Department.
The National Archive is in the FAD.
Yeah, but like they're like operating like completely separately.
Uh,
Yeah, so they're like
which section in FAD is this one?
สำนักศิลปากร
อ๋อสำนักศิลปากรที่สาม
yeah
This is the third
the third
regional.
oh no this is a historical park
Oh,
so
this
this is like so what happened? No, like
Oh, this is their.
no, yeah. So maybe I can explain again. So like the Bangkok FAD, the technology section, they came down to Ayutthaya and they took the initiative
To do this.
to digitize everything from the third regional office
Okay.
and the historic park. Everything except the photographs.
Okay.
Yeah, so they did, and then they also did some of the records in Bangkok about Ayutthaya. So they took this initiative.
So this is not like this part of data was not transferred to the National Archive,
No, this
which
is like,
also has a digital section, a
no.
digitization section.
This is like their internal one. So like
Okay.
they don't really have a plan.
It's for working.
It's for working, so it's not for the public access. Like basically, like when you see it, it's like a series of like folders on your computer that you access. So it's like an internal one, but it has potential to be kind of upgraded. Like if they want to make it into something similar to like what I showed from Borobudur, you know, the one that researchers can access.
Yeah.
Like basically they don't need to redo the digitization.
Mhm.
And like they already captured a lot of the data on their Excel spreadsheets.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be too hard for them to like
To use
upgrade the system to then turn it into like use like archival management software.
Yeah.
So like just make it more professional and like so it's not just for them to use, but potentially like the researcher can use as well.
Yeah.
So that's the good news. Like
So it's just the next step forward.
it's like the next step forward. Like and then
the CSV and
yeah, and like they can keep using their kind of
Yeah.
old school one, but at the moment the negative of that is that no one else can use it except for them. So like if it can be upgraded, like potentially that would be better and include the photographs. So at the moment they only do the plans and the reports. So it would be good to also digitize the photographs and have the three. And then do a little bit more work about capturing the bit more about the context of when the records were created and who created them. So the data is a little bit richer. Yeah, so like that would be one recommendation is that they like there's some training that can involve the three offices to one similar to Borobudur, but at the same time develop the access policy because I guess maybe there might be some reservations about making this data available to everyone, but you could have a policy about how people access it,
like a different layers of access.
Yeah.
Like JSTOR when you have like different levels of paid memberships.
Yeah, well, normally like I think what we should go for is like open like in the UNESCO recommendation. It's like always like talking about open access to cultural knowledge. So like I think we should probably push for like a non-paid one.
No. I mean like just comparatively.
Yeah.
But I mean like for their work document, like the conservation plan, sometimes there's a sensitive issues of one project wanting to use exactly this conservation plan, which is supposed to be decided site by site.
Yeah.
Every conservation plan should not have the same plan.
Yeah. Yes.
But then if you let anybody to come in, a private sector could just copy this and paste on something random. And that's what they want to prevent, I guess.
Yeah. But you could set up like you could have it linked to like an email request.
Yeah.
Like you can set up like a standard
Okay.
form if someone is monitoring that inbox.
Because
Yeah.
currently, if you want to access any of the materials, you have to get the approval from the Director General.
Yeah, that's sensitive.
Another problem is like they are afraid the router.
Yeah, the
because of
looters
when-
will
when the
get
letter-
hold of
Yeah.
The green section.
the blueprints, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's like easy. Like we can solve that
Yeah.
like by having just a process, right? And like the process of developing the access policy is like a negotiation, right? Like I think from UNESCO's side, it's like pushing towards the open access, but while also considering the government's concerns.
Yeah,
So hopefully you can come to like a midpoint where the researchers or the public could still use it for like educational or research purposes, while also
yeah.
about their concerns.
The
Okay.
National Archives.
Yeah, like the National Archives, like actually, like they're doing pretty well, right? Like I don't think like one thing that we could say is that the records haven't been digitized like around that early period, the 1920s, 1930s. So maybe they could look at digitizing that. Yeah, and then it's all in Thai, so I'm not quite sure like
Yeah.
what the catalogue and finding aids are like. But I think the National Archives, they also requested to have some support through this project. So I think they're also waiting to see what would be their kind of input.
I guess if we have this like recommendations planned out for the fine arts department, I mean recommendations and training figured out for the fine arts department, we can later on like approach National Archives again and like find if there could be some like overlaps or
Yeah.
like how can it be more, like how can they, so it's like accessible in both ways and
Yeah.
it's like, it's that you're not doing double work.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And also, like, I think they have good, like, some of the records might be damaged, Taya, and the National Archives, they have really good expertise in preservation of records and also management of records. So, like, they could be the ones, like, it's probably not sustainable to do a one-off training, but if you could link the National Archives to the site management work, like, it's probably more sustainable. And that's what they did at Borobudur. Like they said, they just had an agreement that the National Archives would come and help the Borobudur Conservation Office with some of their work.
Because we did find that, like when we saw the really old photographs from the archives in the park office, like there was this one album that was really damaged from water. So in that case, like maybe it would be good if we could, like have the help for it to be considered.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you asked the National Archives as well in a way, like for example, like have them been a kind of a connecting projects between the National Archives and the regional office of India or something like regarding this piles of things?
No, we didn't get onto that with them, but it's a good point. We're too busy eating watching the demonstration and eating that chicken rice.
Chicken rice, of course.
Yeah.
Actually, technically, when every project of the fine art department, for example, like an excavation
Mhm.
and archaeological survey finished, they have to send all the data to archive.
Yeah, by
Uh,
regulations.
But normally, archaeologists don't do that because they feel like they have a lot of work, so they don't have like a time enough to arrange all the data.
To wrap
So-
up the project.
Yeah, the wrap up the project,
Yeah.
and so and that is like a problem. And I think in my idea, maybe a national archive, if we have like a training course for the FAD and I guess so the national archive go to Ayutthaya as like a trainer for them.
Yeah.
Then set up the system with us.
Yes.
So and I think National Archive should give the program or application of them to the FID.
Yeah.
So that it's like a really helpful to like set up the standard. We don't like need to like put an atom to them because they have their own like a system already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like when you talk about the fact that they have like so much work to do that they don't even have time to wrap up the project, which is something like it's actually one of the necessary steps. You know, when you have a project, you gotta make a report so that the next person that like after you pass away or something, then they'll be able to move on with it.
Actually, a report is like only one part of acoustical work. They have like many photos, but when they do the report, they like select only some of them. So for the rest, sometimes they like left in the cabinet or something like that, and they have also like a artifact data and like a excavation plan and a diary. Diary always keep with like a personal property with
so they don't really share it.
Yeah, but that is very important if you want like to know or understand the conservation of AGI.
The decision, the reason behind decision. So is that going to be sensible to say that like since like by the end of a 1 year project, for example, you have like piles and piles of photos and things that you do not have time to manage. Would it be more sensible if our recommendation would gear us towards if we're going to have the people from National Archive to come and train the people in the regional office anyway, then they should the kind of skill they got from the training should not be used just at the end of the project, but periodically during the project, for example, and like at the everyday basis, there could be like at the end of the day, they spend like 5 minutes digitizing the photos they've got today or their work log today, things like that, instead of having to pile at the end with 500 minutes on the last month of their work. And so they can actually utilize the skill that they will be acquiring from the training at the everyday basis or weekly basis or monthly basis, depends on them. Rather than like, at the yearly basis, because like by the end of the year, you already forget what you've been taught to do.
In my idea, I think we have to like negotiate or to talk with the dean of the FAD, because if we talk with him that, okay, you should set up your regulation, something like this. So it's possible to like keep all kind.
Yeah. There's a need to kind of reform the practice on the ground.
Yeah, and we have to like understand the system of ecological work in the FAD as well, because around 30 years ago, they have the channel of a contract archaeologists. Contact archaeologists have to follow the regulation of the FAD, but for the government archaeologists, the contact like many archaeological record lost or like can't find it. Okay, that is a like condition.
Okay, so what are the key messages from what we've found so far? So yeah, one would be this system upgrade of I think it's important to acknowledge that the FAD, they've already done this really good initiative to digitize the material. So like one step further would be to then make it accessible and to introduce some kind of data standards. So International Council of Archives, how the archives can be structured. And then that could also be combined with the National Archives. But said like this could involve both using the national system and then also looking at the international standards. And then training, like I think like what would be important would be if we can help set up the kind of the workflow. So what are the archival work procedures, the records classification, the different cataloging system, and then like how to do the digitization. So like that would be training in that kind of aspect.
Yeah.
And then like potentially some equipment. I don't know what the UNESCO budget is like next year, but I think setting up like a digitization station, it's not like super expensive these days. So it can be like an overhead camera with a computer plus the hard drives to back up the data. It could be combining with other partners. But I think like one good collection to focus on is this photo archive, like for a quick win, like it's like a little bit of a low hanging fruit and could be done as a kind of proof of concept, you know, like, and training people to then continue the work later on.
Yeah. So in terms of equipment, I'm like in terms of like, you know, the cameras and everything, they kind of have many cameras there, but I would actually more interested in if we're going to invest the storage and the giant scanner thing. Do they need that or
They don't need, they have.
they have?
But
Yeah.
like, I don't think they would have like, actually like what they need is like this, like they might have the camera, but you want to get the specific camera and you want to get the
overhead.
it's like a whole setup. Yeah. You can get
It's on the
like
top of
station.
the ceiling.
Yeah, normally it's on like you can, it depends how much money you have, but you can get one that will adjust up and down for the size of the whatever you're scanning.
Yeah, I see. Also, like that table thingy. I've seen it
Yes,
before.
I
Yeah.
think it's only 10,000 baht.
Yeah, very
Or
cheap.
20,000.
Yeah. And then the camera, you want to look at the camera like, because also actually
One.
there's also like when you're doing the digitization, there's like a standard for digital preservation.
Yeah.
So this is like the resolution that you should scan in to keep it for like 20 or 30 years. So
Yeah.
normally you want to scan it at like the highest.
600,
Yeah, even maybe it depends.
1,002.
It depends on the media, but it can be like, yeah.
From what I learned at the National Archive, they do two different levels. They have a 900 DPI for
Yeah.
archiving, so that's
Yeah.
almost in TIFF.
Yeah,
They have the 300 DPI
for access.
for public access.
Yeah, so like that's like if they already have it, like we can just adopt that.
Yeah.
So the digital one, like you store it on the chip on your hard drive or your server, and then the other one that we're going to make publicly accessible, it might be 300. So yeah, we set it up, and then yeah, finally, like I think the disaster management aspect,
Yeah.
because it might happen again. So yeah,
Gotta stay on the second floor.
yeah, on the
Yeah,
second
that's-
floor, basically. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
But then at the third regional office, they don't have a second floor. So,
Oh,
Yeah, that is a problem.
but they're
So-
a little bit elevated, a little bit.
but the last time they got impacted, they said
Oh, they got flood too.
flooded.
So, I remember that next year, the FAD at the regional office, UTR, like has the plan to like renovate the building.
Oh. Which one, the regional office or the?
Regional office.
Oh, but it's so beautiful though. The wood, the wooden floor is expensive.
So yeah, but finally, the problem is they are still only the one floor. So
Yeah.
in my idea, they should have moved all like excavation report of photo and everything to historical park office because it has a two floor.
Two-story. How about the library, the new library building next to the historic park office? Did you go there as well? There's like another separate building. You
Oh,
see,
it's just one
one
story.
story. Is it inside good? I haven't been there.
Inside is okay, but the problem of the IGI is always like have a flooding.
Yeah, and the annual flooding. Should go back to using the traditional housing style that like, you know, the lakey, 4 lakey's and then the house in the top.
Okay, and then this last one, very important one, but I don't know, I think we need to update this a little bit. I think we're missing a few people.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, so that's it.
Good.
So I don't know, do we want to discuss like the next steps, like what we're gonna do afterwards? Like,
Mhm.
you know, maybe, yeah.
So is there still like first of all, is there still like some outstanding questions to be answered or information to be gathered or interviews that Ajahn Gop needs to also conduct?
I actually just wrote like a memo, like based on what we talked today. If couldn't I, Ajahn Pipat could
That's okay. Don't worry.
could do the summary of the inventory materials that you got from the National Archives, and also so that we could list them down under the different agencies that we have identified. So, and then like if there are some missing information for the like past materials, then we could also interview a few of like senior or retired staff, as you have mentioned. I think that's one pending thing that we would like to fill in. Right? Yeah. Are there any other that you?
I think like it would be good, like just how we structure the data. So like it would be good, like later on, like we can use that preliminary report format, that I shared previously, and then like that would be helpful to fill in some of the gaps.
Yeah. And we also need to wait for your missions in Indonesia and Cambodia as well, because like at the end of at this part, like after this, will you be generating a site-specific set of recommendations, right?
Yeah, so like, yeah.
And after your 3 missions, you'll be having a kind of a overall another one, or?
I'm gonna like deliver like a individual report for each country, like using the similar outline of that preliminary report. So like any like that one, I'll probably deliver that with the recommendations, and it will look like we've got the Bagan example. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
Do you want to get into the Bagan? Just gonna go to the basement.
You want to send it to? Okay. I guess after we have these individual reports, we can decide whether the training is going to be like in 3 different sites, or if we want to look at together. I mean, yeah, we can start with a regional training. I'd like 3 sites involved training in that.
In terms of like your timeline, like for the report, like when do you think you'll be able to share? Because my deadline will be the end of this month, basically.
Yeah, I know.
And then like I'll probably need to rely on you for like some of that technical data. Like basically I'll write up like similar to the PowerPoint and then like elaborate on that. But then like the gaps, probably still missing some gaps.
Yeah. Okay, I will. Sure. But I will try it.
I think that's fine, like as long as I kind of get it, because like, I probably need to finish it by the 28th of July. So like if like I could get something from you by like the 21st, that would give me like a week to incorporate that into the final one.
So you want me to like finish all the chapters?
Probably not everything, but just like it can just be rough. So it can be like preliminary one, right? Like,
Okay.
like yeah, just like I wouldn't, because your final one I think will be later on, right? But just like a short summary.
Okay.
It finished without sharing with anyone.
I sent you an email. Okay.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It's possible.
Yeah, see how
I will try.
yeah, it can be like bullet points. It's fine.
And so I think like what would the country is looking forward to is the next step after the finalization of the report, the site-specific recommendation, and also like on the step of the developing the regional manual and how we're going to taste that in the coming next year.
Yeah. I think we would have a better idea after he's finished all the site visits. So we will look at the results of the mission report and see how the training could be organized. Like we did discuss like maybe two options. Like maybe the first training would happen in Borobudur or something, so that we get everyone together there, so that they can actually see the Borobudur, the current archive of Borobudur as some sort of an example. And then we could invite like a trainer to come and do the archiving collection and all those training that are required for all three sites. And also we could also, like introduce the manual there, although it would be just a very initial version of it. Then the sites could go back and like based on their specific recommendations and sort of like try to implement it.
Yeah. Sorry.
Echo.
Okay. Now just sharing what Andrew sent to me. Andrew, you didn't send me. Did you?
Yeah.
You accept the invitation, but yeah. Sorry. Coming just now. The file is too big. I don't know. The big thing. Is it like a big file?
No, 10.
Oh, that's a big file. Okay,
So this, yeah, it should be there.
yep. Okay,
Okay, so like this is one, you go full screen. So this is one I completed for the Department of Archaeology in Myanmar, Yangon. We scroll down. Oh, maybe we need to zoom in a little bit, sorry.
okay. Which part?
The table of contents. So I just want to show you like what we should include in the report. Like this is like a standard format. So normally we'll have our recommendations at the front, the organization information. So this is like, here I've got the history of the Department of Archaeology. So in our case, it will be fine arts, the existing projects they've done, some other kind of context. Then we'll look at the policy. So the international context, that's like the UNESCO policy. But then the national context, this is probably something I don't know so much about in Thailand. Like the National Archives law, like this kind of information, and then down to the organizational level, like what's their policy for archiving and keeping information. So that's the policy context. And then we would go down to the collection. So the different types of collections that are held. Then the condition. So this is what we saw on our site visit. And then where they're held, kind of the environment, the type of storage. So we have I guess most of this data from our site visit. We keep going down. Then we don't need the housekeeping, but how they're arranged. And then we can look at these other issues like disaster preparedness, and then down to like training needs. And then, yeah, we're at the top, we had the set of recommendations. So I think like would be helpful if I'm hoping to produce something like this for each kind of collection, and focusing like, I probably won't do this for the National Archives collection. Like I think the focus will be on the site level.
Great.
Yeah, it's not difficult, but the problem is that the time.
Yeah.
I think it's similar to that you sent to me.
Yeah, pretty much similar. For you, like we're not expecting to have all the answers. Like I think we just have like a very short summary. Bullet points is fine.
There's 6. So I have 14 days.
You have 14 days to do this.
Okay.
I think that's about it. Do you want to conclude?
No, I think it was, I think we're all clear about like what would be our next short term.
Great. Hope you and also enjoy the trip and the process. What is going on with this?
Oh, no, I was looking at something. Yeah.
Who barked your head?
You want to know, huh?
I'm going to stop recording first. Okay.